Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. My guest today is filmmaker Joe Plante, and he's speaking with us about his documentary series, Remembering the Soul. First, here's the trailer.
Storytelling has always guided our human experience. How are today's stories shaping our behaviors in ways that are destroying our relationship with ourselves and the world around us? Called to this time of crisis, rebel psychologists, physicians, healers, artists, and scientists are reviving ancient wisdom in ways to reconnect our souls with paths to sustainability and sanity. The journey they have set out upon reveals how our lost mythologies can guide us to saving ourselves and the planet. There is no one way for all of us, but collectively and individually, we can change our stories. These are the stories of Remembering the Soul.
Your groundbreaking documentary explores ancient healing traditions, psychic phenomena, and speaks with psychologists, spiritual teachers, wisdom keepers, and shamans. And it's a crowdfunded project. You speak with psychologist Dr. Edward Tick and author and shamanic Reiki practitioner Lynn Roberts, who have both been on Healing Wisdom, as well as people like Kemetic Dogon wisdom keeper Ibsahu Pernebsati and Tibetan doctor Nida Chinag Tsang. Please tell us how you became interested in exploring the nature of the soul and how this project began.
In terms of my own inner exploration and doing soul work, that came after years of struggling and not really getting any answers from Western medical from what I was experiencing in terms of my inner turmoil, but it was manifesting physically. So I've just actually was recently diagnosed with Lyme disease. So it was a very late diagnosis for that. And so I was struggling with symptoms that doctors really were having a hard time pinpointing. And after years of frustration with Western medical, I started reading philosophy, and that was about 8 years ago. And I started with Alan Watts, and I found my way from philosophy to psychology, and started reading Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung are primarily like my main influences, especially for this documentary series. And those backgrounds led me to Dr. Tick. But how Remembering the Soul came up actually was from my own personal breakthrough with meditation. And I had been meditating for a while, not really getting anywhere. And then I had this name that just kept popping into my head during meditations, but it was almost like a normal thought that would disrupt your meditation, but something within me said that I needed to be paying attention to this name. And actually that was Ibsahu. And I had only known Ibsahu as a yoga teacher. He had been a master healer for a long time and knew that much, but I knew that I needed to reach out to him. And what he sent back to me really shocked me and launched this whole series. So he sent me an email back because the way I put it was, I've been meditating, I've been making some breakthroughs, and your name keeps coming to me, and I think you know why. And it turns out he had just taken a pilgrimage to Africa and had prayed to his ancestors to send him the people that could help tell his story. And he had known I was a video producer, and so it felt really synchronistic. And the way he put it was that our ancestors had been talking, and I was just like, what? Pretty taken back by it. And then once we started exploring common ground I came to learn that he is initiated in the Kemetic culture of the Dogon, which is the longest running spiritual practice in the world. They're the descendants of the pyramid builders, and they have kept their culture intact in the face of genocide and invasions for over 2,000 years by surviving in the Sahara Desert. So needless to say, I was like, that story needs to be told. We should do a podcast together. We should work on a documentary. So in the span of a couple of weeks, all of these things just started lining up. I attended a Theosophical Society meeting, which was influenced by Joseph Campbell. His early career and early development of his mythology came from the Theosophical Society. And so I looked up to see if there was a current Theosophical Society. I'd never heard of it. And lo and behold, they're in Western Mass. This was at the tail end of the pandemic. And so they had me on that week. And seemingly from my soul or from somewhere that bypassed my intellect, I just blurted out at the end, I'm looking for a mentor. And everyone gave me these like, kind of, oh, you're your best mentor. And you've got all the answers inside you. And I was like, yeah, I know that, but I think I'm looking for someone to guide, my development into soul healing. And so somebody that hadn't spoke on the call the entire time, we hung up. He emailed me about 5 minutes later and introduced me to Dr. Tick. And upon reading the first paragraph of his book, you mentioned my heroes, Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. And so I just knew there was something there. So upon meeting Dr. Tick, this is wild. He asked me very bluntly, why do you want a mentor and why me? And I said, honestly, I don't know. All of these things seem to be magically happening, and I feel really called to this work. But if I had to draw a line back to where this idea of a mentor came, it must be from Iron John by Robert Bly. And Dr. Tick just fell out of his chair practically because Robert Bly was his mentor. So that's kind of like what launched this subtitle of this book, I know is Soul Medicine Healing Through Visions, Dreams, and Synchronicities. So this synchronistic moment really launched our partnership together and working together. And
what a marvelous beginning.
Yeah. It's wild, and I still have to pinch myself that, I responded to that calling and it's taken me so far. So
Dr. Ed Tick started a Soldier's Heart with his wife, who's also a therapist, and they've been working for decades with folks, just for those who don't know, working with PTSD and mythology and sort of reclaiming sacred myths and investigating the path of the hero and what leads to a healthy homecoming and a healthy reintegration into society after what he describes as the moral injury of war, and looking at people who have healthily integrated in societies that have warriors who are embraced by their community, the pain is less and the trauma is less. And so they've done a lot of work with that and taking groups. So you went on at least one of his journeys. But how have your thoughts about the soul changed since the beginning work on this series?
Well, I think in general, for my own personal reflection on the soul, I think that when you're studying this stuff and you're reading Carl Jung and you're reading Joseph Campbell, the soul seems to be like in their work, and it's much more of like an analytical way of looking at it. At least that was my experience. But doing the immersive work with Dr. Tick really kind of revealed to me how the soul speaks and how we can learn to listen to the challenges and respond to them in a way that is much healthier. In fact, like what's triggering us, and this is actually something I learned from Melanie, who's in Tragical as well, is that our triggers can really inform, where the soul work that we need to do is, and what is traumatizing us or what has traumatized us. I really believe it comes down to being able to shift our story. And so our own internal storytelling, and never mind what we believe to be the case for the greater stories of society in modern times, being able to in a healthy way look at our stories and understand that we are, living out this hero's journey. I think that's the reason it's the highest grossing books and movies of all time follow that format. It's because unconsciously we really are inspired by the journey of the hero. And so getting back to some of your questions, yes, I did start this documentary series with my father. My father taught me soul work by, washing the dishes and chopping wood. Like there was kind of like a presence that he brought to these seemingly mundane tasks. And he always told me that the soul work was in doing the little things. And I didn't really understand that as a kid. And when you're a defiant child and you're trying to stay, come up with your own identity and carve your own place in the world, I think that you kind of resist the lessons of your parents. But in his case, a lot of those things have much more clarity now that he's gone, unfortunately, but sometimes that's what it takes. So we started this journey together. And upon finding Dr. Tick and having him mentoring me through this process of soul work, that's when my dad really like lit up and understood that, okay, remembering the soul could be like a real legitimate thing. And the books I was sharing with him were really reinforcing that. But sadly, just a few months later, he started showing some signs of being pretty ill. What we thought was a gallbladder issue turned into a terminal illness, and he was gone in 3 months. So needless to say, it was a perfect timing for me to be working with Dr. Tick through all of this, tragic upheaval. He was my business partner for 27 years. And so, I haven't known really a day without him in my life. And so doing this documentary in tandem with, exploring Greece with Dr. Tick was just beyond coincidental in terms of what it means to me now. And yeah, so we documented my father's illness and to be honest, a lot of the failings of Western medical to properly give him the healing and the time to do that inner work, because he was really wrapped up in a hospital that whole entire time. And it was just kind of talk about triggering. It was triggering a lot of my experience with Western medical and their, short-sightedness when it comes to just throwing whatever drug at the situation and it not having a great outcome because they're not putting one foot in front of the other and aiming before they shoot. So, and I'm not throwing the entirety of Western medical under the bus. I think it's a great system in some ways, but obviously has a lot of work to do.
So your series wound up documenting real-time evidence, as you say, ancient wisdom's power in our modern world. So I would love for you to talk about the ancient power.
From all the indigenous friends that I have and wisdom keepers that are part of this project, I've come to learn that a lot of what quantum physics and science is talking about in terms of the connectedness of the universe and how we're reflections of nature, and these natural phenomena are occurring. Like, for instance, we don't know what consciousness is still. Science is yet to measure in a way that can break down where the source of consciousness comes from. The great scientists will tell you that there are immeasurable forces taking place on our measurable reality. And so there's a lot of unknowns. If you look at what Nikola Tesla and Einstein said, science really led them to spirituality. And I found that there's really just a bigger conversation to be had around why that is, and why, spirituality is kind of like, it's unique to each person. And I think that it's a vital aspect of our health. And I know that, through Dr. Tick work with veterans, that this has been the only thing that they've really found lasting healing from, and was being able to reframe their story in a way that aligns with these mythological motifs that pop up all throughout history. Specifically in terms of the ancient wisdom, like working with the Dogon in particular, I'm learning that the hero's journey actually originated in Africa. And Haru, the Egyptian god, the hero god, was where we get the word hero. And that's largely what inspired the myth of Hercules, and so a lot of the wisdom keepers in ancient Greece actually studied at the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. And so what I'm learning about this amazing culture, who not only knew where the Sirius star system was hundreds and hundreds of years before science could confirm that, I'm very interested in learning from them how we can reharmonize this modern society back, go more towards our nature, our inner nature, and how we treat the natural world around us. I think that we come into this world with our own sole purpose, and whatever was inside of me that needed to find its path was really yearning for that. And doing video production for as long as I have, I was really working more in corporate storytelling, and I found it to be soul sucking. Like, I just found that I wasn't really using my full creative potential. And so I'd go on walks with my dad, and I would, tell him my frustration with the work we were doing. Not that it was, I mean, we're doing great work, don't get me wrong, but there was something in me that needed, this project. And so after years of going on these walks, he started opening up, okay, let's try to figure out what that is. And, fast forward a couple of years and we're launching Remembering the Soul together. So
if you're just joining us now, you're listening to Healing Wisdom on WOMR. We're joined by filmmaker Joe Plante, who is speaking with us about his documentary series, Remembering the Soul. He has a crowdsourcing campaign, a GoFundMe. You can check out the trailer there, as well as on YouTube and Facebook.
You mentioned belief, and I think the power of belief is well documented, especially in science. The placebo is one of the most powerful drugs that we have. And I think that they're doing placebo surgeries, and with a ridiculously high statistic of people with tumors and cancer that just get cut open and sewed back up with nothing removed from them whatsoever. And because these people believe that their illness is going to go away, it does. Now, I can't explain that phenomena. I don't know what that is, but I do know that science will tell you that it's a thing. And so I believe that the power of our stories are really where the medicine is. And I might be biased because I'm a storyteller, but I do believe that from my own journey, I do know that what I used to tell myself was hurting me on a physical level. And when I stopped accepting stories as being, legitimate to myself, that kind of launched me into this like crumbling of who I was. And so I had to kind of like look inside and reclaim what that is. And all I can say is that it's helped me tremendously. I know it's helped a lot of the veterans that Dr. Tix worked with. And I find that if we're talking about the traumas of war, and we're talking about someone like Melanie and Andy who lost their 15-year-old son, it's like the worst thing you could possibly think of. But there is this inner strength. There are reserves and resilience within us. It's just about how we look at the challenges. Are the challenges terrible and are they going to tear our world down, or are they the medicine? And I find that, when you look at it as a necessity, that these situations are arriving because this is what your soul chose. I know that's a far leap for some people to believe, but I truly believe that if you're able to at least embrace the situation you're in, which really comes down to embracing uncertainty, that the more comfortable you are with uncertainty, the easier it is to be present. And so I think that a lot of the wisdom that I've garnered from the people that I've talked to really just gets down to like certainty versus uncertainty. I think the reason that we have so many people believing what they're sold and believing whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, the stories that are we're ingesting, that our beliefs can be detrimental to us and to society. And I think we're seeing that firsthand. So this is really a voyage into changing beliefs and the transformation of beliefs into healthier ones. And so that's a big part of what this documentary series is about as well.
And there's no shame in using the power of belief for good. Can you talk about Tragical?
Tragical is an episode. It's a feature-length episode within the Remembering the Soul series. I met Melanie and Justin in Greece on a pilgrimage with Dr. Tick to ancient dream healing sites, which was what was the healing modality before modern medicine came along. Some people might know this, but others don't, that the birthplace of modern medicine and science came from ancient Greece. Hippocrates, the godfather of modern medicine, once said that all illnesses begin in the soul and are manifested in the body. And so the godfather of modern medicine and science was talking about the soul. And there's a reason for that, and that's that there's a rich history of soul healing. And a big part of healing the soul was around our storytelling tradition. And if you take storytelling back to around the campfires and the hunters coming back from hunting and sharing what their experiences with the people who'd never been outside the village, within 10 miles outside the village, they'd come back with stories of beasts and all these things that filled the imagination of the people that had never left. And those stories became our myths. And but what I find really compelling is that all of these societies and cultures across the world share the same storytelling arc, and they'd never had contact with each other. Some of these cultures are separated by tens of thousands of years, and geographic things that are insurmountable. So I met Justin and Melanie. Actually, we met a couple days before the group got together, and we traveled to Delphi and we traveled to Poseidon's temple together. And it really struck me sitting across from Melanie and Justin that like there's something within me that had like dreamed about them, or there's some kind of connection there. And we actually talked about it. We're like, I know you, like that. I know that this isn't the first time I've met you, and I know we're going to be working together. It was just kind of like that feeling. We had no idea that this was going to be Justin's final journey. And and that I was actually documenting this 15-year-old kid, who I have to say was among the wisest of us. And he was about 30 years younger than me, and I was about 15 or more years younger than everyone else there. And these lifelong healers were in the presence of somebody. We all felt this, that had this presence about him that was just wise and developed well beyond his years. He ended up unfortunately having an aneurysm, which went completely undetected. And in 36 hours, he was gone. And so it was extremely tragic for his parents. But fortunately, they had the spiritual foundation and background in healing to look at this as their medicine, to look at it as a challenge that that they could overcome. And looking at Justin as not only their son but their teacher in this horrible event that took place. And so, needless to say, to be involved in helping to tell that transformation of their journey through healing through such a tragic thing has been life-changing. It's totally made me more hopeful for how people can cope, and how we do move through trauma is just, I talk to Melanie almost every single day, and we're really helping each other through doing this project, because it is bringing up a lot of wounds. But the ability for us to share our stories, no matter how personal, I believe is something that we all need and yearn for. And there's a lot of medicine in just doing that. So having released the trailer for Tragical, by the way, you can go to Remembering the Soul on Facebook and see the trailer for this. We are doing a GoFundMe if you want to check that out. And if anyone would be so kind as donating, we'd really appreciate it. We've been releasing these trailers and putting together the whole series, which is really tied together from all these synchronicities and magical happenings. This group has seemingly come together as if it was like guided by an invisible hand. And I think that the audience will really feel that when they're watching this. I'm not just talking in clever metaphor here. I like, this is something that just seems beyond possibility, that visions could lead to meeting the Dogon and traveling to ancient Greece with Dr. Tick. And then we meet Melanie and Justin, and I've got wonderful friends in the Mohican Munsee tribe who are also involved in this, Remembering the Soul. And so we're really examining, how people are finding their spirituality from, detoxing from the Western world.
Can you speak to the psychic phenomenon or, occurrences that have happened that have been unexplainable, and the synchronicities? It sounds like you didn't seek that, but it is seeking you.
Yeah. To be honest, 2 years ago, I would have thought that a lot of the stuff that's happening is like woo woo. I would just kind of write it off as, oh, that's just this person thinking that's going on. Until you experience something like that, it seems like that. It's very easy to write off people's experiences. But Melanie and Andy's grandfather clock stopped right at Justin's time of death twice. Justin actually wrote a creative writing essay when he was 10 years old that eerily predicted his death. He was floating down a hospital and he was like, oh my God, I'm dead. And he went up to a nurse and said, boo, to see if he was still dead. Now, here's the crazy part. He went downstairs, and to the left, there was a chocolate shop, and he paid for chocolate. And then he went home and he watched a Cardinals game on TV, and they were playing like to a T. There was a chocolate shop to the left of the door, leaving the hospital that he died in. The Cardinals were playing at the exact same time of his death. And so it was like all of these things started lining up, and I couldn't possibly name them without taking up the entire hour here. But you'll find this stuff in the Remembering the Soul feature. I mean, we've had his classmates come forward and say that they physically saw him. They saw his spirit. And we've had, like, Lynn Roberts had a powerful dream about him and had never met Justin and was confirming things that this psychic medium, Glenn Dove, had said. So there's like people that never talk to each other with the same motif showing up in dreams or in visions that ended up being true. Glenn, when I was filming, this happened. We were talking about Justin and we were talking about, Justin's transformation. But Glenn Dove is like, Joe, is there a William that passed in your life? He's standing right behind you. And I was like, yeah, that's my dad. And just what he shared with me, like no one possibly could have known, this wasn't something you just do a lot of really good research online and you're able to find this stuff out. What he said was, he's like, this is so weird. Your dad's telling me to tell you my birthday. He's like, and he says, happy birthday, but it's not my birthday. My birthday is October 29th, 1955. And he's like, tell Joe. Joe will know what that means. And October 29th was the day my dad passed. This stuff is all caught on camera, so I have to pinch myself on a daily basis.
We've been speaking with filmmaker Joe Plante. You can find Remembering the Soul on Facebook and YouTube. Happy New Year, everyone. Blessings for 2025.
And they sent us ancient Greece, and it didn't stop there.
This is clearly synchronistic destiny sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We have to do it.
Yeah.
This is what we're being asked to do.
Right.
And I think finding our soul purpose, that's what we're trying to help others find.
We're all on the same blueprint, actually.
Okay.
The myths are our blueprints.
Yeah,
Only
right.
people are asleep to it and don't know. We're living these stories again and again and again. It is extraordinary how much this blueprint is replicated in us.
The whole point of me being able to do these things is to help other people learn to find their own autonomy in their own spiritual existence and remember who they are.
What we want to do within our life is to be here, to explore and to expand, and not expect anything, but to experience everything. And that experience is remembering the magic that you came in with.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org. Our theme music is provided by Mason. You can find her website at masonmusic.com. That's MAESYN.